Hey, Montel Williams here. Look, I've got some incredible news to share with you. I want to tell you about my brand new book that's coming out that's called The Sailing of the Intrepid. Now, this book is more than just an historical account. It's a tribute to the brave men who served aboard the USS Intrepid and a celebration of their extraordinary legacy. Writing this book was such an incredible story, and I'm really thrilled to be able to share it with you. So don't wait to grab your little piece of history. The book is available right now to order. You can go to montelmedia.com, and you can even get a limited autograph signed copy. Now, thank you so much for your support. I can't wait for you to read this incredible story of the sailing of the Intrepid. I'll see you on the pages. Well, welcome to Three Thinking with Montel. I'm your host, Montel Williams, and today we're diving into a universal quest for happiness with someone who has lived it, learned it, and is now sharing that wisdom with the world. Our guest is Peter Samuelson. He is an acclaimed filmmaker, philanthropist, and now author of the remarkable book, Finding Happy, a user's guide to life with lessons from mind. This isn't your average self-help book. It's packed with life lessons, gripping stories, and practical tools to help young people and adults alike discover their unique version of happiness. Peter, thank you so much for joining us today. It's so great to see you again after so many years.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. Look, you've had such a fascinating career, from producing films to like Arlington Road to co-founding groundbreaking charities like the Starlight Children's Foundation and EDAR. And for our listeners who may not know, can you share a little bit about, your background, what inspired you to write this remarkable life's work book?
Sure. I think the tipping point, the first important pivot in my life was no one in my family had ever been to college. And I had a 10th grade English teacher, Mr. Lund, and I'm sure he had a first name, but we weren't allowed to know his first name. Or maybe his first name was Mr. Anyway, Mr. Lund said, "See me after school," which is never a good thing. And I did. And he said, "Now look here, if you work about twice as hard and if I give you extra tutoring, I think you could go to a really wonderful university." And I said, I don't think so. I actually laughed at him. He said, "Why are you laughing?" And I said, "Well, my dad left school at 14. No one in my whole family has ever been to college." And he said, "Oh, well, it'll be even better because you'll be the first one." So I did what he said, and that changed my life. And I got a scholarship. I got my bachelor's and master's from Cambridge University, came out and discovered that there was absolutely no work that I could find in the UK. And I had...
What was your master's in?
English literature.
Got it.
With a special emphasis on medieval English literature. And I have to say, they were not standing in a line outside my door trying to hire a guy who knew everything about Chaucer and Beowulf and Gawain and the Green Knight and Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, but very little about anything else. I mean, I was a real literature nerd, and I had been earning money during my university days by interpreting. I got good French, and I had worked just by happenstance for an American producer, and he said to me, "You should come to Hollywood. You should come west." And I said, would I have a job with you? And he said, "Yeah, I'll give you a job." And I said, "And, would it pay enough that I would have somewhere to live?" And he said, "Well, my family, we have a spare room. You can stay with us." And I said, "And I think in LA, you have to have a car, right?" He said, "Yeah, we have a spare car. You can drive that." So that was my foothold in LA. And, I got a visa and the whole thing. And his name was Tony Bushing. And he was endlessly helpful to me. And that's how I got my foot in the door. And I went from film to film to film, initially working for other producers. I was the production manager on the Return of the Pink Panther, for example. And then eventually, 1980, I actually started producing. and I've produced, I think I'm up to number 27 now. But in parallel to that, what I discovered, and which also is another pivot in my life, I discovered that the same toolkit that you use to put a film together, can I pitch this? What is the story? Is it compelling enough? And does it seem viable enough that I'm going to give it 18 months of my life? What's the budget? Who's going to be the crew? Where are we going to make it? Who's distributing it? Is it any good? Does anybody care? What's the result? And so on and so forth. You can address large social needs in exactly the same way. Why are seriously ill children sad? I address that. It has resulted in one of the biggest and best children's charities in the United States, Canada, Australia, the UK. And the Starlight Children's Foundation is, thriving. It's enormous. It does amazing work, but it's still that central aha idea. Wouldn't it be good to make seriously ill children happy? Maybe they would use less pain medicine. What about helping their siblings and their mums and dads to knit their family back together while they're dealing with this appalling crisis of a seriously ill child? Or on to the next one, Starbright World, which I co-founded with Steven Spielberg. We said, this was 1990, God help me. We said, the internet now exists. I wonder if we could connect seriously ill teenagers together, hospital to hospital, especially if they're in a laminar flow room because they're immunocompromised. What if we could connect them together and connect them with their friends and connect them with their families and the class?
Help them make new friends. Yeah.
Yeah. And then on to First Star, where the big aha was, I said, so wait a minute, 500,000 kids in foster care in the United States? Seriously? That's a lot. And like 6% go to college. Wouldn't they need and benefit from going to college more than, the average bear? Why don't they go? And that led to a whole methodology. We're partnered with 17 big universities. It's a 4-year college prep program for foster kids while they're in high school, grades 9, 10, 11, and 12. We get 89% of our graduates into undergrad at a college or university, which is, it's like a big phenomenon. Or so why is perfection the enemy of the good in housing our unhoused? Isn't there something better that we can do than a damp cardboard box on a rainy night, which led to getting the patent on an invention, EDAR, which is the acronym for Everyone Deserves a Roof. It's not as good as an apartment, but it's a whole heck of a lot better than a wet cardboard box. So it's the same entrepreneurial skill set. And where the book comes from is I realized I have mentored at this point through First Star. I've mentored hundreds and hundreds of abused and neglected teenagers and young adults. And I kind of have pattern recognition of what seems important. It's like 24 different issues. And I thought, I could write this down. I could do a kind of what I know now that I wish I knew when I was 18. And I started getting up at 4:30 every morning, 5 days a week, and writing this thing for an hour from 5 o'clock. And I was alternating between two books, one of which was a kind of autobiography, and the other was literally a chapter on these issues which underprivileged kids generally, but all young adults, and I think some adults as well, Gen Z, the younger end of millennial. And I thought, if I do a chapter on each issue, and then at a certain point I thought, this is one book, it's not two books, because I can use all the mistakes I've made in my own life and occasionally a victory here and there. And I can use those to illustrate. So, like if there's a chapter in the self help book for young adults, what is a good risk? What is a bad risk? How can you tell the difference? Good God, I've got examples in every direction. Things I shouldn't have done that nearly killed me, might well have killed me, risks I took that were important to take, risks I didn't take that I should have taken, and so on and so forth. So that's where the book comes from. And you could have knocked me over with a feather. First of all, that I immediately got an agent, and then the agent went out with it, and sort of a bidding war emerged with Simon and Schuster Regalo getting it, and it comes out June 10. And we've just with a another donor, I've just bought 500 copies to give to the students and the alumni of First Star.
So, I mean, Peter, you kind of describe the book as a masterclass for anyone navigating life. Why did you actually write the book now and not do it 3 or 4 years ago? You just weren't ready?
I think it dawned on me that the mentoring that I've done of hundreds of young adults, I kind of developed pattern recognition where I realized there are maybe 24 things that they always seem to need to talk about and try and pause with me. And I realized those could be chapters in this guide to your life. It's kind of what I know now that I wish I knew when I was 18.
Sure, sure. Well, the stories in your book range from wild adventures like rescuing a cat down or a kitten down a 100-foot pipe at 3 a.m. to life-changing
Well,
revelations. Can you share some of the anecdotes from the book that
well, I'll
really?
tell you. I'll tell you the kitten one. So I was the production manager on the Return of the Pink Panther, and we were filming. We filmed in Morocco, France, and Switzerland. And there I was in Morocco, and I got behind on the accounting because your days are so filled and they're like 16 hours long. And I decided I will do an all-nighter in the office in the Hotel Mamunia to get on top of the numbers. And that's what I did. So I'm sitting there all on my own. It's 3 o'clock in the morning and it's completely quiet. And I hear coming from my bathroom,
Mm.
meow, meow, and I ignore it. And after about 10 minutes, I thought, well, what is there? A cat stuck? And I go in the bathroom. There's no cat in the bathroom. But in the wall of the bathroom, there is what looks as though it's going to be a cupboard, but you open it, it's not a cupboard. It's the pipe duct that goes 4 floors down, all the way down to the basement. And I'm looking in, and I have a flashlight, and I shine it down, and there is, sure enough, two little red eyes looking up at me. There's a kitten at the bottom of the pipe duct. So I think, well, I'm not going down there. It's smelly and greasy, and nobody's been in there since they built the building 150 years ago. So I go back and I try and focus on the accounts, but it doesn't stop meowing. So eventually I think, okay, screw it. I have to rescue the cat. Fine. So I go in the bathroom and I take all my clothes off and I climb into this pipe duct and I shin down on the pipes all the way to the bottom. And I get there and I get 4 feet from the cat and it takes one look at me and it runs away laterally somewhere, never to be seen or heard again. I now realize I am 4 floors down in a pipe duct. So I think, all right, well, I just have to climb back up. So I start climbing up. And after about 2 floors of climbing, and there's no way out of it on the other floors, I realize I don't have the upper body strength to get myself back up the rest of the way to the bathroom of my room. So I go back down to the bottom, which is easier. And I think, all right, well, maybe I'll have to call for help. So I do a bit of shouting. Nobody comes. So I think, all right, I'll have to take it very slowly. So it took me, I would say, over an hour, because I would climb 10 feet and then fall back 5 feet and then climb another 10 feet. And eventually, thank God, I fell backwards into these two doors, into the bathroom. And I thought, God, I nearly died there. And I got in the shower. I had my shower. I got dressed again. Went and sat down I had my shower, got dressed again, and I went and sat down at the desk to carry on with the accounting. And there was a knock on the door because it was now, I don't know, 6 o'clock in the morning. And it was one of our electricians saying, sorry to bother you so early. I'm so glad you're here. Can I go over my petty cash with you? And I'm sitting there thinking, I nearly died just now. I nearly died in a Moroccan pipe duct. So I use that in the book as an example of probably a really stupid thing to have done. But young adults, especially young men, don't have the front part of the brain fully developed until their mid to late 20s, the prefrontal lobe. That means that you're operating on the back of your brain with the amygdala, and the amygdala is the kind of reptilian fight or flight. Do I run? Is the tiger gonna kill me? If I run, will it kill me faster? Do I fight it? What do I do? And That's why you die, actually, if you're thinking with the amygdala. The front of your brain is the chess game of life. If I do this, then the tiger might do that. But then if I do this, that might be better. It's thinking ahead in the chess game. But you don't have that part developed in your brain when you're, adolescent, teenager, young adult. And that's why I went down the pipe duct. So explaining that in the risk chapter in the book becomes a kind of life lesson, a life hack, because you can make yourself pause and think through consequences, which is not instinctive for a young adult. Why do we send young men off to fight our wars? Well, because the middle-aged men won't go. You say you blow the whistle, and a bunch of young recruits will jump out the trench and charge into the bayonets on the other side of the no man's land. But if you blow the whistle and you've got middle-aged men there, they'll say, Sergeant, maybe you could go and let us know. They're firing guns over there, and it's too many consequences going on. That's why we send our young men to risk their lives.
In this book, that's sound advice for a young person, but it's also good advice for anybody, any age, right? I mean, that's really what you're looking at.
Well, I think so. I mean, it's been very interesting working with the publisher, because what we think is it does have a much broader audience than young adults. We also think that the people who will buy the book may be older than those who will read it mostly. And they may end up reading it themselves, because we think Uncle Phil, whose nephew is graduating high school, or Auntie Sheila, whose granddaughter is, just got her degree and is going off into the workplace in a strange city and, is a bit bewildered and lost and needs a bit of help. We think it's for young adults, sort of Gen Z and the lower end of millennial, but what we're finding is that the parents and grandparents and teachers and social workers and whoever that care about the young adult, they end up buying two, because one, they start reading themselves and they can't put it down, and the other one they give to who they care about. So we don't know what we've got here. I guess we're going to find out after June 10th.
There you go, for sure. Now, I know, now let's circle back for a little bit, because there are some actionable takeaways in your book. Some of those are key principles or tips. What are some of the key principles or tips that you'd like your audience to remember after they read it?
Well, there are 3 chapters called The Meaning of Life 1, that's near the beginning of the book, The Meaning of Life 2, and The Meaning of Life 3, which is almost at the very end of the book. I have ended up at my, advanced, illustrious age here, thinking that beyond anything else, happiness comes from helping other people. I'll give you an example. We have open case file foster kids, teenagers, young adults in our First Star academies. And there's a class that I teach, which is called the Golden Rule, Random Acts of Kindness, and Pay It Forward. It's two 90-minute classes. The first one, I say, here's a question for you. And there are 30, maybe 10th graders sitting in front of me. I say, people are walking down the street and there is an old lady in rags asleep face down on the sidewalk. Who stops and puts $1 under her arm? Secondly, who stops and wakes her up to give her the $1? And thirdly, who doesn't stop at all? And why do they do that? Ends up being a discussion about the Golden Rule, which is there's 170 religions in the world. Every single one of them, somewhere in their scriptures, has the Golden Rule. The Golden Rule is the sense of balance. It's the sense that if you see that situation, that she has nothing, you have something, you want to create balance. And you can argue it as part of religion, and it doesn't matter which religion. But then I always say to them, so what, an atheist would never stop? And they say, no, an atheist could care about the old lady. And I say, but why would they care? And it ends up with a discussion of the second law of thermodynamics, of all things, because what the second law says is in any closed system, what is a closed system? Could be the engine in your motor car. It could be a planet. It could be a city. It could be a family. What the second law says is if you do not apply energy, if you don't oil the motor, if you do not nurture your planet and take care of its climate, if you do not work at your family to make it loving and viable and to create unconditional love, the second law says you end up with entropy, which means random ones and zeros. You end up, if you do nothing, the engine will stop running, the family will disintegrate, the planet will spiral off into outer space, or you'll have temperatures where people have to migrate because they can't live there anymore, and so on and so forth. So, whatever the reason may be, that is why, as human beings, as part of our survival instinct, we have a yearning, most of us, almost all of us, to help other people. In the second class, I say something wonderful is happening to every single one of you because of a unbelievably generous donor in Dallas, Texas, whose name is Mort. Each of you is going to receive $200. And they say, seriously, we're getting $200? And I say, no, you don't get to keep it. You have to give it away. You have to write an essay, 300 or 350 words long. To whom or to what do you want that $200 to go? And then we're actually going to do it. So an example of that. My name is Jose. I am adding $10 of my own because that makes 210. And I need 210 because down at the Humane Society, it takes $70 for them not to euthanize, not to kill a dog. And I'm going to save 3 puppies. And the reason that I'm going to save 3 puppies is because the last time I was down there, I looked into the eyes of a puppy that had been very badly beaten. And I saw my own eyes because I was very badly beaten as well. So I'm saving 3 puppies. Love, Jose. That's an actual one of these proposals. And then we really do it. And then 2-3 weeks later, they have to go back to see whether it worked. Did the unhoused guy, did he buy the shoes or did he buy a big bottle of Ripple? Philanthropy doesn't always work. But the extraordinary thing is the effect on our kids, on our students, They are all, I reckon, 2 inches taller at the end of this random acts of kindness process because it gives them agency. You know, if you're a kid in foster care, you never get to decide anything. They say to you, tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, have all your stuff packed in this black plastic bag because you're moving to a new placement. You're not in charge of your life. Suddenly, we steam in and we say, you have to decide to whom or to what this money is going. Suddenly, it means that they realize I'm not the worst off. Absolutely, I know other people. I mean, another one of our female students, she said, my mum is in prison for another 2 years, 3 months, and 6 days. And I know she hates the soap and the shampoo there. So I'm going to put the money into her prison account so that she can buy better toiletries, you know, that kind of thing. But for our students, it gives them agency, happiness, and they're all a bit taller. And I think in our wider world, how do you find happy? It's what the book, start by buying the book, but what the book says, just to give it away free, is help somebody else. It's, for example, it's how I found my wife. You know, you meet a better class of person if you volunteer for a charity. Why would they be there if they were, you know, a so and so? They're there because they care about the life force. They feel compelled to help. That's who you want to know. Maybe you might fall in love. And I did. So that was an immediate gratification for me. But I think it's a general truth that when you work for a nonprofit, either as an employee or as a volunteer, whether you do it full time or you do it under your blotter, and if you do it in your personal life, oh, there's someone who needs a bit of help. Why don't I go and help them? You are ennobled by that. And in the end, it's the legacy that you want on your tombstone, you know, helped others. And it's a kind of ripple thing. I unfortunately, because of the age I am, people in my life die, especially people in my charities pass on. And I'm often asked to go do a eulogy. And what I've found is very comforting for the surviving family is I say, you know, we all have actually two lives and they're both real. One is your actual physical life. You have a beginning, you have a middle, and you have an end. But there's another one in parallel, which is the total effect you've had on other people. And if it is good, and if they then grow up and go on to help other people in their lives, it's like ripples on a pond. And I say, and Ben, who we miss certainly very much, because we can't talk to him anymore, but he is in everybody sitting in this funeral congregation, and everyone that you have helped, you all have him in you, and you pass that on. And that life of this much loved person who's now deceased lives forever through the ripples on the pond of life. So I think it's a really crucial realization. I didn't realize it till I started doing my charity work, started in my 30s. But I do think it is, you know, the meaning of life. It's the secret of life. And without it, I think you are an impoverished person, even if you have a lot of money.
There's so many takeaways from your book. I mean, one that I could go on. We could go on and on and on and on forever. A couple of them I like to illuminate. One of them is like you already talked about it, which is the risk versus reward. When you decided to open up that cabinet and climb down those pipes, you were taking a risk. The reward was trying to save a life. That's a powerful theme that you have in your book, Finding Happiness, reaching outside of yourself, taking risk, understanding that whether or not you're doing it for reward or not, but taking the risk is a key part of our lives, right?
Well, I think, look, when I do my teaching to teenagers and young adults through firststar.org, what I say is, think of your life. You're sitting in an envelope and it's dark, but you have a pencil with a sharp point. You can choose just to sit there in the middle and not do anything, or you can poke with the pencil. And occasionally, if you poke with the pencil, you'll say, uh-oh, I've gone through the envelope, in which case you can pull back the pencil, pivot, and go in a different direction. You can say in your life, uh-oh, I will never be a concert pianist, but I wonder if I could, and you can go in a different direction. You might be an athlete. You might be an engineer. You might be a leader of one kind or another, or you might be, the lieutenant who does something extraordinarily significant. But if you just sit in the dark in the middle of the envelope, holding your pencil like an idiot, how will you ever know what you could have been, what might have been your mark on the universe, your lasting legacy of meaning to others? You could have created something. What if you made some films? What if you painted some paintings, sculpted some sculptures, that kind of thing? Life is risk, but the issue for a young adult is, without the front of your brain, the prefrontal lobe functioning, you maybe haven't conquered yet the chess game of life. So that calibrating a risk, is it too risky? Is it a risk that is worth taking? Is the reward this big and the risk is as small as this? Or is it the other way around? Those are the kind of things that Finding Happy, my book, tries to help with. And I know it works because I've been using basically the book when it was still in my head. That's what I teach. So here it is in writing, and there's the audio book and the Kindle book. And what an experience that is, to go sit in a booth in Burbank for 18 hours reading your book into a big microphone in front of you. I never did that before, but I did it last week. So that'll be going up on Amazon as well.
One of the important themes that you put in your book is also living with empathy. Happiness is not just about your personal success. It's about also contributing to others' well-being. Talk a little bit about that.
So what is empathy? I think it's either God-given or it is genetically carried in human beings. Some other animals do care. A group of chimpanzees take care of each other. So do elephants. But quite a lot of animals, no, they don't care what happens. Ants take care of each other, but there are other insects and so forth who don't. But human beings, I think we realize, and maybe it is genetically carried, that, we live in a pack. We live in a society. And if you don't nurture and exhibit empathy, the old African proverb, it actually was the title of Hillary Clinton's book, It Takes a Village, but she didn't invent it. It is literally an African proverb from South Africa all the way up to North Africa. Almost every tribe has a saying that they pass on orally down the generations. It takes a village to raise a child. What does that mean? It means literally that if there's someone who's really good at fishing, they should teach not only their own children, but the other kids in the village. It means that you can't really raise children properly without an extended family. This is the impoverished environment that we inflict on foster kids. Is basically nobody cares about them. Nobody really loves them. And it'll never change because they don't vote. They haven't got any money. They'll never chain themselves to the railings. They don't employ lobbyists. They'll never march. They are in a system that has defined itself, all 2,200 jurisdictions who have self-invented, what do we do about the foster kids over 150 years in the United States? Child Protective Services thinks its job is to take them away from abuse or neglect and put them somewhere where they won't be abused or neglected anymore. And then on their 18th birthday to say, have a lovely life, send us a postcard, you're out of here, good luck. I don't know about you, Montel, but I've actually never met an 18-year-old, including my own children, who was an adult that could really take care of themselves at the age of 18. Why? One day before your 18th birthday, the foster care system tries to take care of you. One day after your 18th birthday, that's 2 days later, no, you're on your own. So one of the reasons why in firststar.org we say, go to college is you get an extra 4 years of somewhere to sleep at night that isn't a cardboard box, that isn't on the street, that isn't couch surfing, but that's the least of it. You also open your horizons. You dare to dream. You can experiment. It's a blessed 4-year period for you to take risks with relatively little detriment and huge upside. So I'm a big believer. Not every kid should go to college. We have, I told you, 89% of First Stars graduates come out of our 12th grade and go on to be an undergraduate somewhere. But that means there's another 11%. They join the Army, they join the Marines, they become a police officer, they become a firefighter, they become a DJ or a sound engineer, or there's all sorts of things that you can do vocationally. But for most kids, if you can, go to college, go to university, go to a 2-year, go to a 4-year, get your associates, get your bachelor's. The actual financial stat, the difference over your lifetime in your earnings on average between getting a bachelor's and simply graduating from high school, it's a difference, a delta of about $1 million. So it's financially much more lucrative to get a degree. If you haven't got one, tons of employers won't hire you. It says it right there in the job requirements. But more than that, it is an environment where you can experiment, where you can have somewhere to sleep, where you have some minimal level of supervision to help you, and where you can try this, try that. Maybe you're not an engineer. What if you're more interested in music? Well, okay, you don't want to do music. Well, maybe you should do a semester of architecture, see how you like that. So getting it right and aiming high. We talk to the kids as though it's a ladder. For 4 years, you're going to climb up this First Star ladder. If you fall off, don't worry. We'll put you back on the ladder. But in the end, you are the only one who can put your feet up the ladder, rung to rung. And the glorious thing now is we've been doing it so long that our graduates, both while they are undergraduates and after that, when they're pursuing their careers, they come back and they teach and they do mentoring of our younger kids. So there's a kind of circularity, and we're really putting a dent in the whole thing. To go from 6% of foster kids in America go to college to 89%. Think of that. Twice as high a proportion of our kids in foster care go on to college as middle class America sends its own kids, which is roughly 50%. So ours is 89% conversion. So it's a win-win. And the book, Finding Happy, comes out June 10.
And it's available anywhere books are sold?
Well, the joke is, obviously it's up on Amazon, it's in Barnes and Noble, and there's the ebook, and there's the audio book, and there's the print book, and so on and so forth. But it's been, Simon & Schuster have been placing it in other retailers. The latest is Target. My son said to me, presumably it goes between, he said, I hope it'll be a big display between the condoms and the plastic spoons. And I said that is actually its natural place in Target, is in between those two items.
Talk to me a little bit about EDAR and the Starlight Foundation. How do these organizations kind of embody your philosophy?
Well, EDAR is very impactful in my life. It started a few years ago. I came out of a business breakfast in Beverly Hills, and a homeless guy comes up to me in rags and smelly, and he shoves his hand, palm up, sort of into my chest. And I'm a bit, taken aback. And I go in my pocket and I take out, I don't know, $5 or something, and I give it to him. And I basically strode off to my car. And I found myself sitting in the car thinking, I'm really angry. And who I'm angry at is myself. Here is someone with literally nothing, and I have so much, and I'm intimidated by him. The hell is going on here? So, what has worked another life lesson, when I'm scared of something, I lean into it. If it isn't going to kill me, I do it more. So I went out on my bicycle on the weekends, several weekends, and I interviewed 65 unhoused people. And I would ask them two basic questions. How do you get money? And where do you sleep at night? And I met an old lady. And when I said, and where do you sleep at night? She said, come, I'll show you. And she kind of took me by the sleeve onto the wasteland that is next to the San Diego freeway. And there behind a bush is this huge cardboard box. And it was disgusting because it had been raining and it had a piece of blue plastic over the top, but not completely. But the epiphany for me, the moment of truth, is I looked on the side of the box and it said in big letters, Sub-Zero. And I thought, this is the golden rule hitting me in the face. I have the refrigerator. She got the box. What's wrong with this picture? So I started off, I thought, why don't I get an architect and a space planner and a budgeter? And I said, let's design a building with dorms in it, 5 beds each dorm, and let's work out what it will cost to put a building up that will house 100 homeless people. And it came back as $5 million. So I said, well, wait a minute. So that's $50,000 to house each person. And I thought, well, I wonder how many unhoused people are there in Los Angeles. Turns out, in the census, it's 100,000 homeless people. Multiply 100,000 by $50,000. That is, Montel, $5 billion. I have no idea how I'm good at raising money, but I have no idea how you raise $5 billion. I also realized no way will the taxpayers ever say, sure, tax us more. Take $5 billion more in tax and let's give them all apartments. So that had me flummoxed. And then I thought, well, so let's not let perfection be the enemy of the good. Okay, so if we can't afford apartments for everybody, or even this building with the dorms, surely there's something we can do that's affordable that would be a lot better than a wet cardboard box, awful, on a rainy night. And so I thought, well, okay, what would it be? And I said, well, it's got to have wheels on it because they're always walking all over the place. They do their recycling and whatever. So I said, so in the daytime, functionally, it should be like one of those big shopping carts that they have at Costco, but a big one, but not that shape. And I said, but at night, you should be able to park it, put on the brakes, and you should be able to let down the front and let down the back, and you should now have a 7-foot long cot with a mattress off the ground, because I went and interviewed a doctor at the UCLA emergency room, and I said, "You get a lot of unhoused people in here. What do they all die of?" And he said, they die usually of pneumonia because they're sleeping on the ground and they get some virus or bacterium in their throat, and then they get pneumonia and then they die. And they don't have good health care and all the rest of it. So, and I said, there needs to be like a cover over it, not just for the rain, but also for privacy. So it's going to have a door and a couple of windows and so on and so forth. And I said, and it can't cost more than $800. A whole heck of a lot less than $50,000 for that bed in a dorm. So I couldn't design the damn thing. I'm trying to draw in 3 dimensions on like a yellow pad and couldn't do it. I have the spatial design abilities of a newt. So I thought, well, where do they have designers that I can get? So I found the Pasadena Art Center College of Design, and I went and got a meeting with the president, Dean Korshek, and I said, if I put up a prize, could we have a competition? He said we could. So we did exactly that. And teams of 2 and 3 students did these designs. They're called maquettes. It's like a 1/6 scale thing made out of cardboard. And we declared winners. I've been working with Eric Lindemann, who was one of the winners, ever since. We went off and we found a metal shop. And we prototyped it. And then we went through, I think, 7 prototypes, throwing it down concrete steps and jumping on it and trying to break it and amending it and so forth. And then I got a wealthy friend to put up enough money that we could buy 50 of them. And then I got the Rand Institute to volunteer, not something they often do, to study whether it was efficacious. They gave us their students who went out with clipboards and interviewed the users. And we've gone from strength to strength ever since. It's on the internet. It's EDAR, which stands for Everyone Deserves a Roof, edar.org, EDAR.org. And they're $800, and there's hundreds of people sleeping in them, mostly in LA and Long Beach, few in San Diego, some on the East Coast, Miami, we have some, and so forth. It's a Sunbelt thing. I don't think I would put people into them in the winter in Chicago. That might not be terribly kind because it doesn't have heat. But it is a whole heck of a lot better than a damp cardboard box on a rainy night. So that is EDAR.
That's incredible. And the Starlight Foundation, talk to me about that.
So my cousin, this is a long time ago because Starlight is now 42 years old as a charity. God help me. I must have been a child at the time. Anyway, I was actually already in Los Angeles and working. But my cousin, who wanted to be an actress, she was still in London. And she phoned me and said, we did a premiere at the Children's Hospital, and I went in costume to entertain the kids. And I met this boy who was 10 called Sean Honorati. And I asked him, what would make you happy, Sean? And Sean said, oh, that's easy. I want to go to Disneyland. She said, now what do we do? How are we going to do this? And I said, well, we have to do it now. You promised him. I said, go talk to the doctor, see if it's feasible. He was a very seriously, terminally ill child. And I said, go and talk to the mum, go and talk to the parents. So we brought him to LA, couldn't put them in a hotel. So he and his mum and the cousin all moved into my apartment on Wilshire Boulevard. And for 2 weeks, we did everything you shouldn't do, probably, with a very seriously ill child. And we had a fine old time. He enjoyed himself. His mum enjoyed herself. We felt we were so powerful in helping to make these things happen. And he went home and he died. And it was a very strange moment for me because it was both very sad. I mean, he slept under my roof, for 2 weeks. We got to know each other very well. And yet, in a way, it wasn't sad because everybody knew he was going to pass. And we felt, look at what we did. We gave him some happiness, and we gave his mum some pictures of her kid enjoying himself, on the teacups at Disneyland and on the beach and this and that. And that's a whole heck of a lot better to remember your child who has died by than, sick with a tube up his nose in a hospital bed. So I called a meeting. What do film producers do? We call meetings. And I thought, what do I need to start a charity? I had no clue, really. I thought, well, I need a lawyer, I need an accountant, I need a publicist, I need an organizer, I need someone who understands the politics of hospitals and this and that. And I just stood there and I said, we did this one wish. Look, pass these pictures around. And I said, maybe we could do 4 or 5 more, make kids happy who are seriously ill. That was functionally the first meeting of Starlight. It was back when I was single. I had had one date with this gorgeously attractive young woman. And I remembered she had told me that she was an accountant. And I had phoned her and said, hey, remember me? I'm so sorry I didn't call you. I'm having this charity meeting. Would you like to come? I really need an accountant. So she did come. And when the lawyer said, okay, so I need to form a 501c3 charity, I got to incorporate it and all the rest of it, he said, what do you want to call it? And I said, I haven't really given that any thought. What do we want to call it? And it was the accountant who said, that children's rhyme, Starlight, Star bright, first star I see tonight. I wish I may, I wish I might, have this wish I wish tonight. She said, why don't we call it the Starlight Children's Foundation? And we all sat there like lummoxes and said, yeah, why don't we call it that? And that we even had someone there, I had a graphic designer there who said, oh, I can see the logo in my mind. It's a child reaching up for a star, Starlight, star, make wishes come true, make dreams come true. Cut to the chase. Here we are 42 years later. Starlight has raised and spent in the United States, Canada, Australia, the UK, well over $1 billion over all of those years. We added it up. We've helped millions of seriously ill children. In the United States, we have installations in 800 hospitals across the country. We have a range of 8 psychosocial services for seriously ill kids. But the bottom line is, when kids are sad, that's a bad thing. We even discovered, not at the very beginning, but through medical research, we discovered this whole serious area of medicine called psychoneuroimmunology, PNI for short, which says that if a person is sad, their immune system doesn't work properly. Their T cell count is too low. A bad thing if you're having chemotherapy. Furthermore, it's a circle because if you have a suppressed immune system, you get sad. So think of it in a virtuous circle. If you can reverse that circle and make the kid happier, you actually raise the T cell count. A very good thing with a seriously ill child who's dealing with an oncological, a cancer challenge, or several other different immune system related illnesses. But there's a whole other thing, which is when kids are entertained, they do not feel pain to the same extent. And we know that. We did a most wonderful piece of research at County USC Medical Center in the children's ward. We have these things called Nintendo Starlight Fun Centers. And it's a thing on 4 wheels. I invented the original version of it. It was really ugly, but now we're up to like the Mark 10 version of it. It's slick and beautiful. Looks like something out of, science fiction. It slides over and under a hospital bed, and it's got in it Nintendo, it's got video, it's got connectivity, it's got video games, it's got educational stuff and so forth. So the way they give pain medicine to the teenage kids is they have a clicker And when they press the button on the clicker, it gives them a micro dose of the morphine or the other analgesic. We measured with a computer how many times do they click the clicker to get a jolt of morphine before the Nintendo Starlight Fun Center arrives over the bed, while it is over the bed, and after it goes away. It was very amazing, the result. We were shocked, and so was the medical staff, and it's become quite a thing. We thought it would be like a vertical-sided channel. So whatever the rate is of them clicking the morphine button, and then the trolley would arrive and it would go down to some lower level and it would bump along. And then when the trolley went away, it would go back up immediately. Wrong. That's not what happens. An hour and a half on average before the trolley makes its appointed arrival, the kid is already thinking, I'm going to play Super Mario. I'm going to play this. I'm going to watch that. And they get all excited and they don't click the clicker for the morphine. So it's a descent to a lower level of morphine. And when the trolley goes away, because another kid is going to use it, it doesn't, the morphine doesn't go straight back up. It does a gentle rise because they're sitting there in the euphoria that they zapped this and that and the other in the video game or whatever it may be, or their empathy in watching a film. And so it's a big deal. And
you prove it. You prove it that then when they're happier, their immune system works better. They feel better.
Well, that's Starlight. And it just goes from strength to strength. I mean, it's become huge. I ran it.
Throw out some stats about Starlight. Where can people go if they want to help donate? They want to help you?
Yeah, it's so simple. Starlight.org for the Starlight Children's Foundation. Starlight, www.starlight, starlight.org. And then if you want to help our foster kids, that's firststar.org. So www.firststar.org. If you want to help unhoused people, that's EDAR.org, www.edar.org. And if you want to know more about the book or you want the links to pre-order or buy one after June 10.
Finding Happy, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Samuelson.la, www.samuelson.la, like Los Angeles, L.A.
That's incredible. Look, Peter, we're almost out of time, but look, one last time. What keeps you motivated, continuing to lead in these innovative, really vital areas?
I think if I stop working, I'll die. I think that the happiness that I receive, not just from creating films, but frankly, even more than that, from creating and nurturing charities. Like on Saturday, I'm going down to UCLA because we've got a thing called the Creation Conference, and we'll have about 150 foster kid teenagers in the room there at UCLA. And then we'll have about another 500 connected remotely from the other academies around the country. That's my joy. That's what keeps me going. That's how I find happy.
My goodness, my friend. Well, thank you so much for sharing Finding Happiness with us. And I hope everybody goes up and looks for a copy of the book. I hope it does extremely well. You are definitely leaving this world a better place. No question for it. And what's Finding Happy, is available now. And it's filled with life lessons and entertaining stories that I think you won't forget. So, Peter, thank you so much for joining us today. And for all of you out there, keep tuning in to Free Thinking with Montel, okay?
Montel, I'm so grateful for the time and Finding Happy. God bless.
God bless, sir. Thank you. Thanks for joining me on Free Thinking with Montel. Please make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to be notified when new episodes post each week. We'd love to hear your feedback, so please send us your comments. Military Makeover is so grateful for the support of Purple Heart Homes, a nonprofit organization that rebuilds and transforms the homes for our veterans.
Our heroes come home with sacrifices most of us can't imagine. As a veteran myself, I've been there and founded Purple Heart Homes to help.
When I tell the story of Purple Heart Homes, it's the freedom to not have to depend on somebody else to do the simple everyday things in life.
Visit phhusa.org/makeover to learn how you can help.